Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Dayo Aluko, a B2B strategic sourcing and procurement specialist. And we will be talking about what marketing leaders need to know when it comes to B2B procurement. I know you guys are ready, so let's get it. Dayo, welcome. How are you doing?
Dot, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really, really excited discussing this very special topic with you. And I'm sure a lot of marketing leaders listening would enjoy it as well. So, can we start about you telling us about yourself, your background, your role?
Oh, well, as you rightly introduced, my name is Dayo. I academically have a background in real estate. That's what I studied in university. But as fate would have it, I graduated right into the middle of a global recession. And
Mm,
as you remember then, real estate market took the biggest hit. So suddenly I had a quick call to make, do I
mm,
try to ride out this wave or I pivot to something else?
mm,
And so I ended up in the capital market back in Lagos then. I
mm,
joined the registrar's company where we were responsible for, managing the records of shareholders, paying them their dividends and issuing certificates, bonus certificates and whatnot. And
mm,
the core nature of that business was record keeping because when people buy shares, even though they transfer it to their children or in 5 years' time, when there's a dividend declared, you need to be sure that the records are up to date so that
mm,
people get what they're entitled to. But then it happened that we had this large volume of what we called unclaimed dividend then, because of course, Nigerian banking had not gone very digital at the time. So you had like across the nation, there were billions of naira worth of unclaimed dividend. And the government started, intervening, saying, okay, look, this money, you can't just keep it. And again, businesses in my space were faced with the challenge of pivoting.
mm, mm,
And we came up with this idea that, look, if our stock in trade is keeping records, right? Why not we do it professionally? So then you see companies like banks, for example, they will
mm,
rent out a whole apartment just because they want to stop tellers or records they have in the past, which statutorily they must keep, you
mm,
know. And that's where we came up with this idea to have a digital archiving and a physical archiving business out in Lagos then. And I was actively involved in that project. And it was in that process, my eyes opened to the world of procurement because then we were building a business that was supposed to mirror Iron Mountain. They are the largest digital archiving company in the world. And as
mm,
such, I got involved with a lot of, software procurement, real estate procurement, a lot, the whole 9 yards. And I felt, wow, this is very interesting because personally I'm a process-based person. I like seeing
mm,
things
mm, mm.
from conceptualization to bringing it to life. The processes involved, and
Yeah.
so that really sparked my interest. And just as that project was coming to a head, I said, you know what, I think this is what I want to do, and I think I really want to do this professionally. So I went to the US to study for an MBA in supply chain management and logistics
Mm,
from
mm,
Ashland University in Ashland, Ohio. And subsequently to that, I worked for an ethnic grocery chain, an Indian company actually,
mm,
out in the US then. And it also involved me having to do a lot of buying from India, Pakistan, Nepal, other countries. At that point, I had to also learn Hindi, at least the business languages of Hindi,
Interesting.
exposing myself to other cultures, other ways of life. Um, the food, the way they do business. And it was a really, really interesting time. After my time there, I moved from the US to Canada,
Mm,
where also I found myself heavily involved in food. So pretty much out in the US, my first experiences in Canada, they involved myself being in the food supply chain, from
Mm.
distribution to importation to quality to the e-commerce side of it. Those were the things I started doing then. And I must tell you, food is a very, very interesting space. We all
Yeah, it
go to
is. Yeah,
Walmart, we go to Superstore, we go and just pick up the oranges. We don't know those
what
products
goes
have
behind?
traveled the world, and
Yeah, yeah,
the a lot of really interesting backdrop to them. But then I was really like neck deep in food, especially during the COVID lockdown, and that's of course essential. So there was no going home or anything for us. We were
that's
actively
right.
involved in the way things were going then. And after that, I left the food space. I moved into oil and gas, where I worked with one of the biggest around. Out there, I was mostly involved in the technology of supply chain.
Okay.
So, like, they recently migrated at the time to a version of SAP Ariba, and Field Glass is what they were using. And my role was to act more like a technical partner to make sure the implementation went good, to also like clean up the records and all those, to make sure it was like running smoothly. And
Hmm.
so, after my time there, I moved to my current employer, which is within the aviation space, the Havilland Aircraft of Canada. So pretty much my experience has taken me from construction to business development to food to oil and gas and now to aviation. So that's been my professional story so far.
Yeah, it's nice to see that just like marketers, you're able to function within these different industries and even with a more significant impact, if I will use it that way, which I think is the the fun part of your career. What is not fun is what you mentioned at the beginning,
Mm.
recession.
Oh yeah.
I personally term it the cold recession. Maybe I will start using that in my content. But there has been the cold recession
Yeah.
in 2023, whereby people say, oh, there's no recession, but people keep getting fired, costs keep getting cut, and things like that. And I'm very sure that corporate procurement will be affected in a way because, procurement in its simplest form is the management of business resources.
Yeah.
um how what is that like today? Like, how much pain do you guys feel or pressure do you guys feel in still getting things right, even though there's all these issues with the economy?
Well, I think the cold recession is a very interesting way to put it. If I'll backtrack a little bit, maybe we're looking 3 years ago now. Yeah. Suddenly the world as we knew it's grounded to a halt, you know,
Mm.
and everybody had to kind of stop whatever it is they were doing, and we went into a lockdown. And even though we can say the economy has reopened, we're back to life as usual. But on the business front, we can't say the same because
Mm.
pretty much what happened was for lack of a better word, we can say that was a great reset. Now, you see,
Okay.
typically in procurement, there's a lot of things you do that you rely on historical data. Oh, what's the rolling trend? Or 5 years ago we did this, or 3 years ago this is the trend. But I mean, even in our personal lives, you can see that after the lockdown, even the biggest of companies today are working with maybe 3 years record at best. you
Mm.
know so what was acceptable then is no longer acceptable today. What was wrong then is probably not wrong today. And the moment you don't have historical context to go with, you're just fine. You're trying your best, you're trying to be as accurate as possible. For the most part, you're shooting in the dark because you do not know for certain if what's obtained in the past is going to obtain again. I'll give you
Mm.
an example. Within the aviation space, for example, like all of a sudden you had thousands of aircraft grounded. They
Mm.
couldn't go anywhere. Aviation space is a very, very quality conscious space, right? Because, like
Yeah.
I joke with my
Yeah.
friends, there are no pit stops in the sky. You can't say, oh, I'm hearing one noise. I think I want to stop and check it.
Oh no.
You know,
Yeah.
for every whoops, that's a mistake. You could have 300 people meeting their untimely death. So it's a very, very, very quality conscious space where there's little room for compromise. Okay. But then you find out that there is a supply chain backlog.
Mm,
What was obtainable in 2019, 2020, you can't use those figures to plan anymore. I know people used to say, "Oh, let's go lean." Prior to the pandemic, lean was a thing,
mm,
but then you realize that products that had maybe 2 months lead time is now going to 12, 15 months. So what do you do? Do you buy just what you need now, or you try to just hope for the best and stock up for 3 years?
wow.
So that cold recession is through, and a lot of companies are still struggling. And that's why, yes, it's true. Like the job figures came in this morning, 60,000 jobs were added in Canada, but we still have a 5% unemployment rate. And the reason is because people are still figuring this thing out as they go.
Mm,
Folks that heavily invested in the e-commerce side of things, just because during COVID, their numbers went up. But man is a social animal, right? We're out again. People take grocery shopping as a family activity. Why should they buy it online?
yeah.
Suddenly those companies are heavy on equipment and machinery they don't need. And unfortunately, the people are the easily most disposable, you know,
Yeah.
part of the structure to get some relief. So yes, you're right. The cold recession is biting all over, and companies are still trying to, gather new data, pretty much fresh data, generate trends from it, analyze them, and hopefully it will guide them going into the future.
Hey there. If you're anything like me, have lots of website traffic, but no idea which ones are window shoppers and which are ready to seal the deal, then I've got a game changer for you. It's Lead Feeder. This is a tool I like using. And what it does is it shows you which companies are coming to your site. You can track their behavior and integrate it with your CRM, which will help take your lead generation efforts to make it more targeted. The result? Convert more website traffic into sales. Head over to leadfeeder.com now for a free demo, and you can also get a free extended premium trial when you let the rep know that you found out about Leadfeeder through the Marketing Leadership Podcast. All right, back to the show. Yeah. It's a bit of a grim time, but I hope in the spirit of this podcast, I'm very optimistic
Yeah.
that we will across board we will get this right. And going into B2B procurement now, you may not. I know you've worked in different industries, and that could help you deliver perspectives to this. But I know that when it comes to like those who need something from procurement, whether it's the sales guys or the marketing guys or HR or all these units, it is a bit of a unique relationship, right? I need you to help me, you know, can you help me? There's a bit of a street culture when it comes to procurement and other departments. So could you give us like a high level breakdown of a basic procurement process, really from the corporate side, as it applies to any kind of unit, including marketing and
Uh,
sales?
yeah, sure. Of course, I'll start.
1:27 p.m.
uh,
1:27 p.m.
I'll start by saying, of course, when you say procurement, the first thing that steadily comes to mind, I'm just going to make this as watered down, not watered down, but at least as casual and as for especially people who are trying to understand how procurement works. The first thing you need to remember is that when you say procurement, you say money. Okay, and
Yes, money.
when you say procurement, you say money. And just like coming off the top, what we're talking about cold recession, everybody now wants to get absolute value for every dollar they spend. There is almost little or no room for things like, oh, let's spend it and then see. People practically want to have a crystal ball. For every dollar they spend, they want to be dead sure that they're going to get their money back. So
Mm,
basically, when it comes to procurement, especially on the corporate side of things, people, of course, you're not expected to just go, oh, I feel. No, there should be a need, right? And that need, when it arises, must be in line with the corporate objective. Okay,
mm,
so
mm,
for example, you work in the food industry. You can't suddenly wake up now and say you want to buy bolts or you want to buy rings that are not aligned to what you need. So the
Yeah.
most important thing is first and foremost, identifying the need. And then when you identify that need, that is where the procurement teams come into place, because the procurement team is more exposed to the markets, to the supply side of the market, while
Got
the
it.
sales teams, for the most part, is exposed to the demand side of the market. Okay.
That's right.
Now, when those needs arises, it's the procurement person with accrued data, experience, relationships that knows, okay, who are the kind of suppliers that can meet this need.
Mm,
Because when it comes to supply, there are a lot of things you need to factor in. It's not enough for somebody to say, oh, I can do this. Are they certified? Are their
mm,
certifications up to date?
mm,
Even with all the best intentions in the world, do they have the capacity to deliver? There's the willingness and the ability to do something.
yeah.
Even though with they are really enthusiastic, are they really able? Do they have the track record? Do they have the good financial standing to be able to meet that demand? Also, you need to work out the specification of exactly what it is you want to buy.
Mm,
Say for example, I'll be pivoting between the food and the aviation industry quite a lot in this conversation. But
okay.
say for example, you say, I need oranges. Okay, that's as vague. I mean, to the common person, you go into Walmart, you pick oranges, but bro, there are about what, maybe 12, 13 species of oranges, and that is
Wow.
where specification comes in. Not only that, the definition of good. So there are some times when I was heavily distributing food, right? When the products come in, you can tell this brand is going to accept this product.
Mm,
This brand is going to kick this very same product. you know these people are going to take this, these people are not going to take this. So things like that, you need to be sure, like, the specifications must be clearly stated.
mm,
Also, that is when you're done with your evaluation, you send out requests for a quote or a proposal for mostly what is professionally acceptable is for you to build a supplier pool.
mm,
Because also, because of, like I said, the great reset, it's unheard of now to say, oh, this is the only supplier that does this thing.
mm,
As much as possible, you want to diversify your risk, because think about it. When COVID hit, right, it was not uncommon you see a whole factory shut down because somebody got infected.
mm,
And then what happens? You've made commitment to others, to your own customers, you have production already in line. So it's important to, as much as possible, diversify your supply base, just to ensure
yeah.
that, because in line with the cold recession you spoke about, being resilient, being agile is one of the ways companies are trying to ride this wave, to be sure that
Yeah.
you have all your flanks, you have all your flanks covered. And then when you're done with your supplier selection, of course, you state expressly what you expect in terms of the quality, the deliverables, the timeline. Because also there's, like, going back to food, right?
Yeah.
You can't stockpile. So they do a lot of order fencing, just in time delivery. If I need tomatoes at the end of the month, it makes no sense for you to deliver them today,
Yeah.
because by the time the end of the month comes around,
They are bad.
you're keeping me with garbage, right? So things like that are what is going to go into the contract you're going to agree with that supplier, to say what are the terms and conditions of filling this order. And then subsequently,
Mm,
and most importantly as well, there should be a continuous feedback loop, because it's all a steep learning curve for everybody. Where your suppliers have done well, let them know. And where they have not met, the required standard, you also let them know. There should always be room for improvement. While you're giving them your own feedback from your side, that's where the marketing team is also very important to you, because they give you their own feedback from the end user side. Okay. So if, for example, I get in products from a supplier, I check them out, they're good, I certify them okay. The sales and marketing team runs with that product, but the end user has a complaint.
yeah.
All right. That's a different kind of complaint. And it's important that I might not be able to catch that just because of where I feature within the chain. It's important that we always have a continuous, feedback loop, just to ensure that first, relationships are properly maintained, because supplier management is a big deal within the procurement space as well. Managing those relationships, ensuring that even when there's only one left and there are three people clamoring for that product, you're top of mind. You're the preferred,
Yeah.
you're the preferred. And yeah, so basically that's how you run it down, just ensuring that those needs identified also meet the requirements and the supplier, does as what is stated in the contract.
Yeah, I would say that you are doing very well for someone without a marketing experience, and that's good. And I'll tell you why. The
Okay.
reason why is that you're mentioning some key points.
Mm,
You are saying that those within what people are now trying to call the commercial team. Some people are saying marketing is not enough, sales is not enough. We need to start building teams around marketing, sales, and service. So
yes.
that's you have people in service complaining about products back to procurement, in terms of product sourcing. So that's on one side. But something else that you mentioned is the fact that this commercial unit or this commercial group is on the demand side of the economics and then supply side for procurement. Now, there is a bit of a conundrum here. We are in the Great Reset. People, again, something nice that you mentioned, people want immediate crystal ball ROI. They want to see what this investment or this commitment is going to give them. However, here is what is going on and here is what is changing. Let's use the analogy of marriage. I'm very close to you very well, so I know that you like analogies. Let's say, let's just say that in North America, there is a demand to get 50,000 couples by the end of 2023. Just an estimate. What happens? People start getting married without dating. People start getting married without courtship, and the marriage never lasts at the end of the day because that customer retention is doesn't last. There is a bit of a churn, and people have realized this, and now they are beginning to preach the concept of demand generation, which is why I said you mentioned something nice about demand. Here's where the conundrum is. Demand generation does not work in the sense of, oh, I need something immediate. Back to our analogy, you have to date for 2 years or 3 years. I have to court you for 2 years or 1 year, and then we get married. For some people, way longer. And people say those form the seed for a long-lasting marriage. In our case, a good customer retention, product or not. So let me give you another example of what a demand gen campaign might look like. You've worked in the food industry. I know that the company where you worked, they deal with, self-service, cook it yourself, food. As a marketer, I would come to procurement and say, hey, we need to hire some contractors. We need to pay for ads. We need to print collateral. We need to do all these things, whether it's marketing, sales, or service. We need to do all these things in order to teach customers how to do this themselves. So I'm not just sending it to the customers. I need to print flyers. I need to make YouTube videos, or I need to create some subscription system that will enable customers to use that product properly. Now, that campaign that I just described to you may not have long-term results immediately because they will probably learn it. They are not interested at some point. Then somebody tells them, oh, cancer is going to kill you tomorrow. And then they come back to say, oh, I need to start cooking vegetables again. Then they come back to that brand because there's a top of mind that you mentioned again. And then they come back to that brand, they go to that YouTube video that I've spent procurement money producing. This is probably 3-4 months down the line. So my question is this: is there a way where again, I will stick to commercial groups or commercial stakeholders, marketing, sales, and service. Is there a way that we can convince you guys to say, yes, I know it's the recession, but now we are in an age where customer behavior is changing, B2B, whereby we want education, we want engagement. We don't want you to come to us like sell, sell, sell. We want it to be gradual. We want you to take us on a date. We want you to do all this very gradual stuff. And we know that it's going to cost money. And so how do we create that balance in terms of communicating with procurement or finance or whatever team it is to say long-term campaigns are the best right now? They may take 6 months, but they provide sustainable customer acquisition or even customer retention.
Thanks, Dots. That's a very interesting conundrum because it happens every day, and I'm sure both the commercial team and procurement professionals listening to this can easily relate to exactly what it is you're saying. But
Mm.
for me, wherever I found myself, I always, and I'm, involved in maybe a brainstorming session or an all parties meeting of some sort. I always say,
Mm.
look, we are in a competition. We are not in competition. All right.
Got it.
Um, it's important to know the people on your side and the people on the other side. Okay. If, for example, you go on a sales campaign and your aim is to boost sales, okay, suddenly you've boosted the sales and the procurement team, for reasons out of their control, cannot meet your own demand. The
Mm.
word out there will be the organization has failed.
Mm.
They are
Mm.
not going to streamline the criticism to say, oh, the marketing team did a fantastic job, but the procurement team dropped the ball. No. And as such, I always believe that a collaboration of both parties is very important. We should also respect each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. For example,
Mm.
if I'm speaking with a marketer and he tells me this is what the market is demanding, I think I should be able to trust his word for that to say, okay, you're on the demand side of things, you know what the market is calling for. But I, on the other side, will tell you that, look, there is a 2 year backlog on supply for things you need to meet a spike in demand.
Mm.
I'm all for what you're doing, but understand my own limitations as well. Because as with the marriage analogy you gave, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses.
Yeah.
Certain things the one partner is very good at that the other partner also complements, and vice versa. Where
Yeah.
you're weak, you're carried on the other side. But what's most important is that we're all fighting for a common goal. I see a
Mhm.
lot of times is always us versus them when it comes to the procurement and the,
Yeah.
and the commercial team. But in the long run, nobody is better for it.
Mm.
In the long run, you're just going to have a broken down team with a broken down communication. So, what do I typically propose when the commercial team is out there coming up with, like the example you gave, the YouTube videos, the trying to get more people to come on board, the cooking instructions, the social media campaign and whatnot. I always look at it as this: when you throw something in the sky, except of course you are in space, it will always land somewhere.
Mhm.
And where it's going to land is usually not far off from what direction you threw your hand or how much force you applied, right?
Mhm.
As a marketing team, you should give me a ballpark figure to say, okay, look, this thing is good that we're trying to do is going to spike demand by so much. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before you make a commitment, I think it's important that you speak with the procurement team and say, look, in a world where demand increases by 30%, do we have the suppliers on board already who can handle that spike? Because you see,
Yeah.
what you always want to try to avoid is a damaged reputation. Reputation management is also very important.
Mm.
I always believe it's better you go with what you have, the 100% you have, than to promise somebody 130% and you can't deliver.
Yeah.
When the dust settles, you're probably going to return to 75% and not even the 100% you were before, because you are now like a promise and fail organization. So for me, that relationship can be easily managed by, you know, before anything goes out, before anything goes public. This is what we're looking
Yeah.
at. This is the anticipated effect. Do we have the supply to meet this spike? You gave an example, because when I was in the company you mentioned, for example, we had instances where campaigns go out, all right, and you see, oh, this meal has had this amount of demand.
Mhm.
But then suddenly, for the week in question, you see there's a 30% spike that caught everybody unaware. Okay. You are now in between, oh, we can't meet this demand. Should we give the customer credit? Should we go all out regardless of the cost to fill the demand? And the system suddenly is trying to, find their footing. So I strongly believe that a collaboration between both from inception, all parties meeting of some sort to say this is where we're
Mm.
going, and when my own action, what is the reaction on your own side? And like I
Yeah.
started with, We are in a competition. We are not in competition with one another. And I think working with this mindset really helps to build a synergy between both teams.
Yeah, I won't drum too much on the competition bit because I want to assume that if you're listening, you get the point. But here's what I think the problem is mostly, especially with sales are a little bit better, but service and marketing, they are at fault with what I'm about to say.
Mhm.
And that is they like to work in silos. It's my lane. I'm not going to work with any other unit. Some people don't even know that there is a procurement process in whether you're hiring marketing talent or an agency or you need a marketing budget and stuff like that. And when it's enterprise, we are talking of 6, 7 figures. Now, what when it comes to you mentioned something about doing giving like a breakdown of what that initiative is about and how it connects to demand, what the expected or projected results might be. I would like to add that it's important if you're listening now, whether you're a marketing leader, or if I don't have to be a marketing leader, I've had procurement experience when I was a rookie. It's important to do as much due diligence as possible when communicating with procurement. Oh, they are internal. I don't need to make up this presentation or I don't need to make up this whatever. No, you need to work like, again, yes, we are both colleagues, but treat them like your internal clients. Treat them with respect. Treat them specially to say, this is what we want to do. We have a serious intention about it. This is the commercial value that we are going to get in return. And whatever it is you need to do to communicate that needs to be done. Don't just walk into a procurement office and say, oh, I need this. The CEO says we need this. Yes, CEO needs this, but you also need to be responsible on how you communicate CEO's requirement because most marketing teams report under the CEO. It's important to know, okay, this is what we are trying to achieve. This is what it will take. Mostly procurement care about what it will take, but they also care about what the company will get in return. Just as Dayo has said, it's not when something goes wrong, it's not the procurement that will be at fault. If a campaign doesn't get the kind of reach that it deserves, it's not the procurement that is at fault. If a brand loses to competition, maybe due to bad customer experience or bad campaigns or low engagement, it's the company, it's the brand, it is the reputation. And so when it comes to um, for example, one of the things where I see marketers want to escape from is vendor research. They just, let's say put me for example, I just want to go online for like 2 days, find like 3 or 4 suppliers, no due diligence, no nothing, and then I just send it over. Some don't even do due diligence at all. They have a mindset of the service or the product or the human resource that they want to get, and they just want to get it and that's it. No due diligence. What, from your own perspective, what do you think is the importance of doing due diligence so that we can avoid making future mistakes? We don't want to regret at the end of the day.
I mean, yeah, the due diligence generally, I mean, you can't say it enough. Okay,
It's
I'll
obvious.
I'll give you a simple instance, right? Again, when the pandemic hits, every tourism business from aviation to the cruise companies to duty free to hotels, they had it bad. Like they had it really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
And there's this organization who, I mean, it's just rather unfortunate that I think February of 2020 or so, they bought
Mm.
up other aviation companies like parts manufacturing and aviation parts manufacturing and distribution companies, right? They bought, I think the deal was sealed in February, and by March, practically before they even sold one thing, everything was shut down.
Mm.
Okay. A couple of months ago, the company declared bankruptcy.
Mm.
Very big name, very big player in the industry. Someone in sales, for example, looks through your approved vendor list, sees that name and feels, oh, they've done it for us in the past, they can do it again.
Yeah.
Without even understanding that These people are on their last legs. Imagine then you build a campaign around the fact that, oh, they were a fantastic partner 2 years ago. Then your campaign is practically dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Not even only that, there's a lot of dynamics that has changed look at the layoff we started this conversation with. Okay,
Mm, mm,
many organizations have like serious key man risk situations now. That this guy is good,
yeah.
he's
Yeah.
knowledgeable, he's been with us from the beginning, but the reality on ground, the numbers don't justify his continued employment with this organization, you know. And then when people like that start leaving, you understand that it's no longer the same. This is somebody you could call. He could give you a breakdown of your accounts, things you needed. He had a way of accelerating things for you. Suddenly, just because of the way the situation of things, the economy, or the pressures within that space, he unfortunately lost his job.
Mm,
Then you're speaking to somebody who eventually he will find his footing, but for all it's worth is a newbie or a rookie in this space. Okay,
yeah. Yeah.
things you could get done in like 3 business days, after you're having to send the fourth, the fifth reminder. Things start dragging longer than usual just because you didn't know you didn't take a minute to find out what is actually going on within those organizations.
Before
A
you
lot of
made the
Before
layoff.
you make the leap, a lot of companies have downgraded from the behemoth they were to practically a mom and pop shop. You cannot continue dealing with them at that level on the basis of what you were doing with them in the past. So yeah, I mean, having your due diligence done. Some people have not renewed the certifications, they've not renewed their licenses just because they are trying to make an economic justification to spend that kind of money. And
Mm,
then you hinge your campaign pretty much on, oh, well, when we reach that bridge, we would
we'll go.
notify them.
Yeah.
And then you tell them 2 weeks before the beginning of the campaign, can you do, oh, I'm sorry, our license is under review.
Mm,
Wow. Then what are you trying to do? Look for a new partner? Are you trying to wing it? So yeah, the due diligence part, you can't stress it enough. It's very important. And not only for the procurement people are usually the first to know, all right. But and that's why I started with, there should be that collaboration even from conception. Hey, do we have suppliers who can meet this thing? Oh no, these guys have lost their license. These guys are on the edge. These guys have downgraded. It only helps everybody. So yeah, due
yeah.
process. I mean, it's just one of the most important to talk about. If you ask me, it's one of the most important aspects.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I know we like to do marketing, we like to do sales, especially sales. Sales do they just want to do sales.
They want to move
Uh
the numbers.
it's always like what is procurement doing? They are always there's always that impatience is the word
Mhm,
I'm trying to get there. But I
mhm.
think at the end of the day, we don't want to do things that will come back and bite us. That may even cause us to lose our jobs or whatever it is. If you are working for whether it's Fortune 500 or Fortune 2000 or from a mid size to an enterprise, then things start to get really complex. And at that point, you need to recognize that these units are being set up to make life easy for the company, to make all the systems to work together. Another aspect of interdepartment relations is the fact that, yes, I know that the role of procurement is very important, but they don't actually have the money. It's the CFO that has the money. They tell the CFO how to spend the
Boy,
money, right?
yes,
CFO maybe gives the final signature or whatever that looks like. So my question is this: as commercial people or marketers, who should we rub shoulders with the most? Is it the head of procurement or the CFO? Or
oh boy.
permit my English. Whose ass should we lick or kiss, or whose feet should we oil the most? Office politics sometimes still happens, always for the good of the company, but it still happens. So I'm sure most people won't mind this question.
Wow. So Dots, a
I'm
man
putting you
has
on
a
the spot.
I know, right? A man has appetite, he doesn't have money. A man has money, he doesn't have an appetite.
Hmm,
None is better than the other, right?
hmm,
While you can want to push the procurement team to get things done, and you really need to have a very cordial relationship with them, the CFO is equally, because I can start, that's it's money. Whatever you're
Yeah.
dreaming, whatever
Yeah.
ideas you have is all premised on money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the cold recession you referenced, every dollar, every amount going out needs to be justified. So I always tell the marketing team, I said, look, this is the way I see it. Your marketing campaign starts from the inside. Picture
Mm.
when we were kids, right? You wanted money from your dad. It's, say for example, you wanted to buy what's the game we used to play? Maybe you wanted to buy a Sega
Sega
Genesis.
Genesis. Yeah.
You wanted
Yeah.
to buy a Sega Genesis from your friend, okay? It's okay for you to go and you need to do your due diligence to get somebody who has a Sega Genesis for sale. Okay. Oh, I can connect you with somebody. You need to be sure that the guy connecting you is not connecting you with stolen property, is not connecting you with stuff that can lead you into trouble.
Hmm.
So even though you have a band of brothers you trust there, your number one what do you call it? Your pitch starts with the
Hmm.
man who's gonna drop the money.
Yeah.
Right? And in this case, that's the CFO. So I always
Yeah.
believe that none is better than the other. It's just that what you're convincing each party to do is pretty much different. You're convincing the procurement team to be a little bit more technical on the field for you, walk
Yeah.
through walls for you to, you know, things that were supposed to get to you in 6 months, that you want them to be able to get it to you in 3 months. Okay.
Hmm.
But the CFO on the other side, that's the guy who is even going to make it worth your while to lobby me or lobby any other procurement professional. Because lobby procurement team all you like, if the money ain't coming, then
It's
there's no
nothing.
point. There's nothing you
Yeah.
can do. And just think about the efforts you put in, because for me, I can always tell people numbers don't lie, and I always, superior arguments, clarity of thoughts, how you articulate those thoughts and how you present them is the difference between people who you see, oh, this guy walked into the room and got the result. No,
Yeah.
the CFO is the first, that's your first marketing call. That's the first guy you need to sell the dream, sell the idea, and he needs to buy into it, because on his own side he has a budget to protect. He has corporate because at the end of the day, these things are not set up for charity, right? It's
Yeah.
one of the bottom line is to make profit, and that bulk stops at its table. He has a budget for these things. He's going to reference, oh well, the last time you asked me for money, nothing came out of it. Why should I give you this time? And because you made a mistake the last time doesn't mean we're going to close the marketing department, right? It's
Yeah.
just, like I said, you need to be able to sell the ideas to both parties. It's just the mode of communication and the language is going to be different. While you are telling the CFO to dip his hands in his pocket and take a huge risk, because at the end of the day, the bulk will stop at his table, you're also going to be able to convince the procurement team to see the picture in a different light. When you're talking to me in procurement, you're not necessarily talking to me about ROI, not as deeply as you will be speaking to the other guy. So I think a solid relationship with both, I won't place any above the other, just because
Mm.
if you're in the good books of the CFO and you and the procurement teams are at loggerheads, that money I can bet you is going to waste. And
Yeah.
at the same point, if you're very, very cordial with the procurement team and you don't have the buy-in of the CFO, what's going to happen is the next time you call on the procurement, oh, you want to waste my time like you did the last time, you know, stuff. So I think you just need both parties, though the level of relationships, the dynamics of both relationships are kind of different, but both are equally important, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And there are a couple of other things I'd like to ask you in terms of doing right by whether it's the CFO or the procurement teams. But before then, we'd like to take a very quick commercial break from our sponsor. When we'll be back, there are about two best practices I would like to pick Dio's brain on when it comes to this. I've been enjoying this so far. I hope you have. Stay tuned and we'll be right back. It's the Marketing Leadership Podcast with Dots, and I'm here with Dayo Aluko. We've been having a very great conversation with regards to what marketers or commercial teams should consider or learn about when it comes to B2B procurement services or procurement operations. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about measurements. You ended, Dayo, with that a little bit when it comes to what the procurement team might be looking forward to in terms of like the performance of their activities versus what a CFO is looking forward to. So, what do you expect? What are some of the few, I guess, performance metrics? It could be one or two that you expect from commercial teams once a procurement system is done, and we want to gauge the performance of that particular investment, if I'll put it that way. What are some of the things that you guys look forward to?
Of course, chief among this would be the return on the investment itself. This is money we're talking about, and beyond even say things like customer count or new, new onboarding of customers. I think most important is the return of that investment. Some people might be able to bring in 1,000 customers at a loss,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the other guys are able to bring in 700 with a very solid return on that investment. So
That's
yes,
true.
the good way is to measure and also get your feedback from that. What did we do right? What did we do wrong?
Yeah.
What should we stop doing? What are the lessons learned? I think that is very, very important. And also the objectives you set out to achieve at the beginning of the campaign. These things could be very different. Some will just be okay. You gave a very good example with the meal prep situation, right? You said, look, you might not see it now, it might be over a 6 months period. Okay. Now, what's you have to determine, how do you measure success over 6 months? Because if you're being realistic with yourself, in 6 months, you even give an example. Some people will start, they stop, they go.
Yeah.
In that period, you're gaining some, you're losing some. Your hope is just that you gain more than you lose.
Mhm.
Are you going to do a net retention? It's what's important is, while the financial place is non-negotiable and taken care of, you also need to start looking at other metrics. How much complaints? Because look, some
Yeah.
people actually hope for growth, but they're not operationally ready for that growth.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have a barrage of new customers. Do you have the framework to handle this? Have you called more complaints to yourself? Have you called more issues to your organization? So there are many ways I think you should be able to measure the success of any procurement exercise. And how does it affect the bottom line? How does it move us closer or further away from the company objective?
Mm.
So if, for example, you're a like food space, you're a quality conscious organization, right? And then suddenly you go on a campaign that demands you to up your production.
Mm.
Now maybe you have to start going to buy from new farmers you were not previously dealing with, or you need to up your volume. Once you up your volume, it's a game of numbers, right? The chances of bad produce falling through the cracks increases.
Mm.
Do you already have the framework to catch those things before they go out? Or the only way you are finding out is when your customers called you, oh, I opened this orange, it was black on the inside, or I opened this vegetable, it was already wilted, and now you've gone on a campaign.
Mm.
Is that really a positive? So there are many metrics you can use just to be sure that, look, what we are going into, do we even have the framework to handle the barrage of customers that are going to come in? So yeah, I will just say the performance and how far it moves you away from your objective is very, very important in my it's a way to measure it.
Yeah, I like the fact that you looked at counts and
Mhm.
averages.
Yes.
Averages are very important because that is really what determines your momentum, or determine what that impact looks like. Another thing I would like to mention to marketers is that, and this is very obvious, it's important for us to be very transparent
Yeah.
with the way we communicate our insights. For example, it's only support or customer service that have no choice but to just escalate whatever is going on. But sometimes even they too they try to protect themselves. But no department in this world, in the corporate world, has more ego than marketing and sales. Marketing with sales, when the numbers are good, that's like another extra shoulder. But for marketing, we can drain ourselves in all these terms and terminologies and semantics, so you can just leave us the heck alone. So we sometimes we are like hedge fund managers for brands, and yeah, at the end of the day, transparency is important at all levels, because the more you communicate as a commercial team to procurement or finance, the more improvements can be made. Being on a personal campaign advising professional marketers, because marketing is what I know, that by showing visibility, and I remember you mentioned something about that, by showing visibility to management on what is going on in your space, you can trick them to believing in progress rather than targets. Everybody's afraid of targets. Because of that, we do all kinds of unethical things. But when you look at the concept of progress by providing visibility, the thing you actually don't want to provide visibility, you don't want to do in the first place, by doing that, you tend to trick leadership into accepting progress rather than accepting targets, and using that the concept of progress or course corrections as a way to what are we afraid of the most? Getting you to keep your job. Let's just put it as bluntly as it is there. My last question is this, and I'll break this with a story. Back in 2013, a division of marketing and IT transformation developed some branded material around email signatures. So I mean, there was a lot of disagreement about how that will work and why that is. The email signature was like the size of a business card.
Okay.
So, and that's like on the digital side. But what happened when that was rolled out is that it it increased paper usage by 50%. Ask me why. Because of these signatures are supposed to fire on reply emails and on fresh emails. And so because of that, you start getting printing extensions. If I need to print a document for audit trail and take it to cost management or procurement, or take it to any other unit for approval, instead of me taking 5 leaves, I'm taking 8, 7 leaves.
And three of
Because
those are just signatures.
yes, and 3 of those are just email signatures. So it took a couple of months, and at the end of the day, they sort of worked out a way to scrap it until they went paperless. Now, I'm asking you this question because I'm about to ask something around sustainability. And when it comes to your expectations from employees in general, not just the commercial department,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are there some things that you've been noticing from your work in terms of best practices on choosing the right company assets from a sustainability perspective, or just proving a point to your other employees that, see, you need to think sustainability whenever you're approaching us with any kind of procurement or any kind of supply that you need?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very, very interesting and very in the question shows you're pretty much in touch with what's going on. In almost every facet of our life now, the conversation around environment and sustainability comes to play. It's funny how before everybody started, really talking about the environment, even sustainability is part of the bottom line of any organization. The angle I look at it, if I think I've mentioned this to you personally, paper, you see, is something that I can't, like, for the life of me, I don't see why any forward thinking. I mean, some is inevitable. I totally understand
Mm,
that. You still need to
mm,
push
mm,
paper, you still need to,
mm.
but certain practices, like, do you see some company that ask you, do you really need to print this email? you know Sometimes I feel, because of the reach of digital media these days, there's only so much printing. Say, for example, you want to print a flyer or something. The question you should ask yourself is, do you really need to? Well, even if you do need to, just because certain demographics are not as maybe IT savvy, or they are
Savvy,
not as
yeah.
digital as the others, yes, you might need to, but you didn't need, where in the past, maybe in 2001, you probably needed to print 1 million copies. today maybe you can peg it at 200,000 and that will be fine. You
mm,
know, also, even when you need to print, if at all you need to print, have you factored in recycling into these things? Are you using
mm.
recyclable papers? Are you using ethically sourced materials? Um, for example, at work, we're talking about this new kind of printing ink that has something to do with recycled coffee grounds or something. I don't really know the technology
Interesting.
behind it, but you can see that they are really trying to leave nothing behind and just, you know, when the coffee is done, I know some people use that to do like agricultural purposes, but also it's coming into like the printing of ink and other stuff like that. I think those are ways you can try. Again, you really need to print an email to go show your boss. Um, if he has any review for you, these are things that could be tackled. I'm sure Microsoft Word has a review button. You
Yeah, they
can
do.
leave your comments, you can leave your feedback without necessarily having to. Some people in my organization don't even know where the printer is because you can spend your whole year and not know where it is. That's fine. But I just feel that you should, if at all you need to go physical with paper or any kind of material, you know, just try to walk around things that have recycle potential, also being very reusable. So if you notice you want to do a promotional wristband or something, okay,
Mm, mm, mm.
why should you give it a lifespan by putting a date? Look at Stampede, for example. All right,
Mhm,
Stampede
mhm.
is started Stampede now, and why do you want to do a wristband to promote your business with the exact date that is there? Because what then happens is once the event is over, you have outdated products that you have no
I
use
did
for.
not think about it that way.
That you don't have use for. So, except of course, you've built it to be a recyclable or you reusable, something with a little bit more evergreen, like you said. You
Evergreen,
know,
yeah.
say, oh, the collaboration of Dots and Stampede. There is no date range. It could work forever and never. So things like that you need to factor it when you're doing your marketing campaign, when you're doing things like t-shirts, promotional items, printing. Try to make sure that things are reusable because think about it.
Mm,
If I put a Stampede without being very date specific, I could share the rest next year. I could
yeah,
share it
yeah,
some other time. Stampede is a cultural part of Calgary, right? So it's almost evergreen, almost always usable. But things like that are what I feel that the marketing team can incorporate just to, fall in line with the whole sustainability agenda that most organizations are driving towards these days.
yeah. I like this. I'm going to take a cut out of what you just said now and share it with all my followers because I never thought about it this way. It's not ever having evergreen communication digitally is one thing. That is also sustainability in its way, but having evergreen communication, even when it comes to like physical asset, is one thing. I mean, we don't have the time now, but I'm sure digital transformation has also helps. You've said in your background that you run a lot of things with technology, the Scrum system of things, and all
Mhm,
that. That
mhm.
also really helps in making things more efficient. And don't get me wrong, sustainability is not just about it's not just about the things that we see. Time in itself, by wasting time, you are wasting other things. So you need to be sustainable with your time. You need to be very efficient in the kind of things that you do. And I'm sure you have a lot of exposure with how you use IT to make procurement systems more efficient
Yeah,
because
yes.
people really and you feel free to disagree with me on this. Back in the day, people feel procurement is just another arm of the government, very bureaucratic and so on and so forth. Please, government, don't come after me. You guys know it's probably true, but now it's much better with technology. So I just wanted to add that to that. I know we don't have as much time, but Dayo, it's been awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you for your premium wisdom. I usually tell a lot of our guests about their premium wisdom, but you are actually a monk. And if you're listening, you've probably heard of all the various analogies that he has used, in speaking here. So thank you so much for your time.
My
Where can
pleasure.
where can our business leaders find you if they need guidance on technological driven procurement efficiency?
Well, I can easily professionally be found on LinkedIn. My name is Dayo Aluko. on LinkedIn, also on Twitter, where I also chime in on procurement and procurement technology conversations. I also involve myself in, tutoring for people who want to take certifications, like the
Okay.
EPIC certification and other supply chain certifications. I also speak when I get the chance. So yeah, those are the things I do professionally, and it's my pleasure to connect with other like-minded professionals as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's all we have for today, guys. Please see more episodes at dotslovesmarketing.com and subscribe to the Marketing Leadership Podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Till next episode, connect the dots.